They looked like the perfect couple, blonde, charming, and deeply in love. But behind the polished exterior, a darkness was lurking. What started as a romance soon spiraled into one of the most chilling crime stories in Canadian history. A case that shocked a nation, exposed the disturbing power of manipulation, and left many questioning how well they truly know the people closest to them. This is the story of the Ken and Barbie Killers, a name that hides the horrific reality behind their crimes. Before they became infamous, Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka lived seemingly ordinary lives. Paul Bernardo, born in 1964 in Ontario, grew up in a troubled household. His father had a history of disturbing behavior, and his home life was far from stable. Despite this, Paul presented himself as a charismatic and confident young man. Many described him as having a Ken doll appearance, earning him the nickname that would later become infamous. Underneath his charming persona, however, was a deeply manipulative and controlling nature. Meanwhile, Karla Homolka, born in 1970, had an entirely different upbringing. She was raised in what appeared to be a happy, middle-class home. She loved animals and worked at a pet store. Outwardly, she was sweet, bubbly, and well-liked. But Karla was drawn to dark things. She had an interest in power dynamics and was fascinated by the idea of control. In 1987, their paths crossed, and the attraction was instantaneous. From the outside, they seemed like the perfect match. But behind the scenes, Paul's darker tendencies surfaced, and Karla didn't just accept them, she encouraged them. Before the crimes that would make them infamous, Paul was already engaging in troubling activities. Between 1987 and 1990, Toronto was plagued by a series of disturbing incidents involving a man attacking young women. The police had DNA evidence, but forensic technology at the time was not advanced enough to match it quickly. At the time, Paul was living his double life, a seemingly normal young man with a dark secret. Meanwhile, Karla was becoming increasingly involved in his twisted fantasies. Instead of rejecting his behavior, she enabled it. And then things took a horrifying turn. In 1990, an incident occurred that would mark the beginning of their deadly partnership. One of the most tragic aspects of this case was the death of Karla's own sister, Tammy Homolka, in 1990. Karla had a close relationship with her younger sister, Tammy, but Paul had become obsessed with her. To satisfy his desires, Karla conspired with Paul to incapacitate Tammy. Using animal tranquilizers stolen from her workplace, Karla assisted Paul in drugging Tammy during a family Christmas celebration. The incident turned fatal when Tammy began choking on her own vomit. Paul and Karla panicked but cleaned up the evidence before calling for help. Tammy's death was ruled an accidental overdose, and the couple faced no immediate consequences. This horrific act solidified their dangerous partnership and emboldened them to escalate their crimes. Paul Bernardo continued his attacks in Scarborough, but police were unable to identify him despite having DNA evidence. By 1990, his violence escalated, and his relationship with Karla became increasingly abusive. Karla, however, didn't resist. Instead, she became an active participant in Paul's plans. Despite this, the police began to take a closer look at Paul in connection with the ongoing investigations in the area. Between 1991 and 1992, 2 young women went missing under suspicious circumstances. The first, Leslie Mahaffey, was last seen on June 15, 1991. She had been locked out of her home after missing curfew. That was the last time her family saw her alive. The second, Kristen French, disappeared in April 1992 while walking home from school. Witnesses saw her being approached by 2 individuals, and after that, she was never seen again. Both cases were eerily similar. The victims had no known connections to the perpetrators. However, authorities eventually uncovered evidence that linked the incidents back to Paul and Karla. The nation was shocked as details of the case came to light. Despite their efforts to cover their tracks, Paul's volatile nature ultimately led to their downfall. By 1993, Karla had begun distancing herself from Paul. When she went to seek help, investigators started to piece together the case. Authorities searched their home and discovered evidence that changed everything. In a shocking turn, Karla struck a deal with prosecutors, agreeing to testify against Paul in exchange for a reduced sentence. She claimed she had been forced into participation, a claim that would later be heavily debated. Paul, on the other hand, stood trial in 1995, facing multiple serious charges. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and he was convicted. He is currently serving a life sentence with no possibility of parole. Karla, having secured a plea deal, was released in 2005 after serving 12 years. The case of the Ken and Barbie Killers remains one of the most infamous in Canadian history. The plea deal given to Karla has been widely criticized, with many believing she played a much bigger role than she claimed. Paul remains in maximum security prison with no chance of release. Meanwhile, Karla has built a new life, changed her identity, and attempted to distance herself from her past. For years, their actions haunted the communities they terrorized and left lasting scars on the families of their victims. The Ken and Barbie killer case isn't just a tale of crime. It's a story about manipulation, complicity, and the devastating cost of unchecked violence. And while Paul Bernardo remains behind bars, Karla Homolka has walked free, a controversial outcome that continues to stir heated debates about justice and accountability. What do you think? Did Karla truly deserve her freedom after all she did? Or did her plea deal rob the victims' families of true justice? If you found this story as chilling as we did, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What surprised you the most about this case? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth true crime stories like this. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next upload. Until then, stay curious, stay safe.